Ladies and gentlemen, representing the 1988 national champions, please welcome Tri-Captain Ned Bolcar, the man who you saw knock down that final pass against Miami, Pat Terrell, and a man who was only 11 years old in 1988, but has always loved Notre Dame, 1999 graduate of Notre Dame, Jerry Barca, who has just released his book on that season entitled Unbeatable. Good to see you guys. I'll start with an unconventional question. I'll ask Jerry the first question, because you have spent a lot of time with these guys. I was honored to be around these guys back in '88, but I know perspectives change, and I think the players get a different perspective as time goes on. So, all the work on your book, what made this team special?
Well, I think it was their togetherness and their toughness. I mean, you saw some of that in the video. They had a point, a lot of people leading up to the '88 season, the talk was it was going to be '89 was going to be Notre Dame's year. And these guys came together and said, why not this year? Why should we wait? And on some of the senior leaders like an Andy Heck, said, we're not going to be around next year. Let's do it this year. And there was a togetherness that they weren't going to be messed with. Coach Holtz talked a lot about being unflinching in the face of anything. And I think that mentality that they were going to prove that Notre Dame was back and it was legit really shows up. It shows up on the eyeball test when you go back and watch game film like I did. And it shows up in the way they talk about each other and how they were able to just play for each other that year.
You, of course, were a captain of that team. You were the National Chevrolet 1987 Defensive Player of the Year. And yet Stoney came back. There was a rotation. You didn't get as many snaps that year. You got a lot. You were in that rotation. But sometimes a guy was a captain, wait a second, what do you mean someone else is getting some of my snaps? That never happened on this team. You guys were completely a team. And I think your leadership helped that. How did you go through that season? How did you lead that year?
Well, I think, as Jerry mentioned, the toughness of the team, but the team was very close. We all came to Notre Dame to win, and to win for the school, for ourselves, and all of our great fans. So we all made sacrifices. And coming off the '87 season, we started off 8-0 and ended up 8-4 that year, I believe. And I had a good year. And going into '88, we had more linebackers than we needed at the moment. So we split time, and it was tough on me.
Can you have too many linebackers?
No, you can never have too many linebackers.
Right.
So it was tough on me personally at times, because if you're a player, you want to be on the field, you want to contribute every single play, you don't want to come off the field. And but we had so many leaders on that team, from the captains of the team, Andy Heck, Mark Green, myself, to Pat Terrell. Unlike Rocket, I'm not going to name the whole roster, but you can name the whole roster of players who were leaders. And I knew that I was going to do whatever the coaching staff wanted, and I was going to lead the whole way, whether it was going to be from the sideline or from on the field. And every down I played the best I could, and I contributed in many key situations. And a lot of us did come back and play in '89, and we probably had a better team in '89, but we ran into a very good Miami team in '89. So, as Jerry said, we believed in ourselves. Probably after the first month or 2 months that Coach Holtz got here, we believed in ourselves, we worked hard. '87 was okay. '88, we started off and we beat Michigan. We looked at each other and said, we got a pretty good team here. And then as the season went on, then obviously Miami, we were sold beyond belief. So '88 was a national championship year, it was a special year. We all led. We all did what was right for the team, and I did that, and I'm very proud of my teammates, myself, the way I handled myself and was a leader. And I think there's a reason I was the captain twice here in Notre Dame. But once again, there could have been 100 captains on our team, because that's how many great players and leaders we had.
By the way, there have only been 18 players in the history of Notre Dame who have been a captain more than once, and Ned is one of those players. So certainly happy that you were on that team. Now, that iconic Miami game happened on the 3rd Saturday of October, 1988. This weekend is the 3rd Saturday. These two guys in the stat book had almost identical numbers. They both had 4 tackles in that game. They both had 1 unassisted tackle. However, this guy knocked down a certain pass, and you may have forgotten Second quarter, he picked off Steve Walsh and raced 60 yards for a score to give Notre Dame a 21-7 lead. So we heard you talk about the knockdown. Talk about the interception.
Well, you know, it was a magical year, magical season, and for me, it was only my second start. You guys have probably heard rumors how I've got switched to defensive back. It was a little humbling, but you know, as Ned pointed out, we had so much talent on that team. It was never a situation where we had to look back over your shoulder. You already knew you had a potential All-American as your backup, but we had such confidence that, you know, you were representing you know, not only the history of Notre Dame, but we took pride in being a starter out there because, you know, you were filling a spot that anyone would do, you know, give their left leg to fill and to play their heart out. So in that Miami game and the interception, you know, it was a situation that although we have the greatest student body in the country, the greatest fans, we were playing for each other. And not just to make each other happy, but we were a tough group. If I would have let Steve Walsh catch me, I could have never looked this guy in the eye. He's a quarterback. So it was fun. It was in the second quarter. And as a defensive back, you always were trying to get the big pick six. But, you know, it was early in the game still, Ned, and I was worried that, you know, 60 yards, am I going to be able to recover and get my breath back and play the rest of the game? But it was fun. You know, Miami personally for me was a big game because I'm from Florida. And so a lot of the guys that I played against on that team, I played against in high school. So to be able to show up and make some big plays in that game was special personally. But it's funny when I went back home, you know, to Florida, and I'm in the barbershop getting a haircut thinking I'm going to get the same pats on the back at home, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen, yeah.
You had to be ready to be humbled with Lou Holtz. And you saw on that video Tony Rice and his big smile. I mean, what a great personality he was. But it wasn't easy for Tony Rice here. Many will remember they had just instituted a new rule when he got here called Proposition 48 that made him ineligible to participate his first year, even though he had the grades to do so. And if you've met him, he's a sharp kid. And I knew he had gone through some problems. But Jerry, he talked with you in depth to maybe even more degree than he did with many, just how difficult it was. People on campus calling him stupid and things of that nature, and how he persevered in his first year of play to lead this team to a national championship.
Yeah, it was definitely something I was after in telling the story. I think, you know, Tony's the quarterback of Notre Dame's, the longest winning streak in this storied program's history. He's the guy under center for all of that. So it was something that intrigued me, and he did. He went to a pep rally his freshman year when he wasn't allowed to be around the team, and a youngster goes up to shake his hand, and the father says, "Don't talk to him. He's a dummy." You know, he watches Notre Dame upset North Carolina in basketball that year and catches the same comments, "You should be back in your dorm room studying." And it was really tough on him. It's not a subject he likes to talk about, I'll tell you that. I interviewed him 11 times, and it's not something he wants to talk about, because his attitude was, "I'm going to kill him with kindness. I'm going to smile. Nobody's ever going to let me know. I'm never going to let people know that I'm dealing with this." And it was one of the interesting things that when I talked to his offensive linemen and his teammates for the book, they never knew he was dealing with that stuff. He never brought that to the huddle. He never brought it to the locker room. What he brought out was leadership all the way through and through, and that he was going to do his job for this team. And, you know, years later, he loves this university. You know, he'll be the first one to say Notre Dame's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. And for him, it starts and ends with his grandmother's choice that said, "Hey, you're going to follow that little man, Lou Holtz, to Notre Dame."
And you hear people say Notre Dame, he's a Notre Dame man a lot. This place creates it because they make you succeed, but it's hard. And when you do get your degree here and get through it, then you're a Notre Dame man. And Notre Dame men don't lose to USC. These guys never lost to USC. Ever. So, and this game was 1 versus 2, and talk about adversity. Tony and Ricky didn't understand that Lou was really super serious about not being late for meetings, especially when they got a second chance. And they were late again, so they got sent home. Nobody thought you were going to beat USC without those two guys, and yet you did. Tell me how you did it.
And he mentioned it's Tony Brooks, not Tony Rice.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
His brother Reggie's here. Sorry, I had to clarify that. But we're in California. We went out 2 days early because it's a long trip. It's around Thanksgiving. And we're number 2 in the country, or 1?
You're 1.
We're 1.
See how humble they
We
are.
focused on the game, not on where we were in the rankings. So we're number 1 in the country, and we got a meeting that night, and nobody could find Tony Brooks and Ricky Waters. They were 2 sophomores at the time, and they were playing a substantial amount of time. Very good players, obviously. And Coach Holtz pulled in about 11 guys, and I happened to be one of the 11. I'm not sure if you were there. It might be a couple of the older guys. But he pulled us in, and he said, we have a decision to make. He said, I know what I want to do, but I'm going to let it up to the team. It's your team, so take a vote. Do we send them home, or do we let them play? We all looked at each other and said, send them home. Not one person hesitated, because we knew that the team was greater than any individual. That's how we got to where we were. And
now, Ned, you're correct. There was 11 people in that room.
Yep.
The other people in the room,
at the same time.
we were a close team.
Oh, we love them, but
there was a little separation. I did not want to send those 2 guys home because
but we did. And we were mostly older guys there, and we knew that what made this team good was the bond and the closeness. It was team first and individual second. And I knew that because I was living that every day out there in my situation, being captain and splitting time. That was very difficult. But we all said, send him home. Because we knew also we had Mark Green, who's a captain senior, who's a great football player and great running back. And we had some young guys that could give him a breather here or there, but we didn't need them. We didn't need them, Pat. And it turns out we didn't need them. Well, we needed them many games later and for the next couple of years, and they are great players. But that sent a message to the team. We'll rally around each other, and we'll win despite losing 2 key guys. Mark Green ran for 140, 20-some yards.
Something along those lines.
A great game he had, and we won the game. And
Stan Smagala with an interception.
Stan Smagala had a big interception playing in the, well.
And Tony Rice made a little run in that game,
But Mark
too.
Green had a big day, carrying the load at tailback. And we looked at each other and said, all right, let's move on to the next game and get those guys back, and they're part of the family again. But, we rallied around each other.
All right, he covered USC, so let's talk about the Fiesta Bowl. I know Ned and I spent some time after the game that night, and it was a different era, where after the game, people kind of hung out with each other. But what were you thinking after that Fiesta Bowl game?
You know, after the Fiesta Bowl, it was, obviously it was a bowl game. We had a good time, but we were there, we were focused. Throughout my entire college and NFL career, I think I was more prepared and more confident in that game than any other game I've ever played in. And it wasn't an arrogance. At that point, we bought into the system, and we knew, the only team that could beat the Fighting Irish was the Fighting Irish. And so going into that game, it was a sense of relaxation a little bit, but, I started getting nervous because I wasn't nervous, And so when I did that long enough, I got nervous, then I knew I was ready to play. But after the game, we played our hearts out, with the guys that you sweat and bled with through the whole season. I think us going back and seeing our family members, our parents, is what really made me realize what we had just accomplished. Because, it was my sophomore year, my junior year. It was Ned's 8th or 9th year.
4th year.
Yeah. But, when you see people at that age that are older than you, they know what you've just accomplished. And they realize that, Ned and Pat are going to have this relationship and something we can share with forever. And our kids know about it. And so at that moment, I don't think we realized what we accomplished, but seeing the look on people's face, even the administration, the student body, or not the student body because they were partying, they didn't realize it either, but the coaching staff, it was like, wow, I think, Ned, we just did something pretty big. And, so obviously it's gotten even bigger now that we're getting older, but it was a fun time.
Yeah, now it's 25 years later, and every year when Notre Dame looks pretty good, they start the season off well. I said, well, this might be the last year I can say I was one of the last captains of the last national championship team. And last year at the BCS game, I was ready to hand that off to the captains from this team. Well, about the 3rd series of the game, I said to my brother, well, I guess I'm still one of the captains of the last national championship team. And the way college football is nowadays, and it's tough to win that many championship games, that what Alabama is doing is amazing. Anyway, So I may be a captain for a long time. I hope not. I'll be happy to hand it off next year to the next Notre Dame team because it is special. So, we got players out here, Mike Brennan, Lindsey Knapp, a few other guys I saw. You know what? We get together. We love Notre Dame. We love our friendship, our camaraderie. And we would be that way without a national championship team. But when you win, like the Wounded Warriors, when you go to battle with each other, you sacrifice for each other, and you come out the other side as victors and alive and surviving. We look at each other as we achieve something that's special, and that's a little bit extra bond for us. But what camaraderie we have when we do get together, which isn't as often as we can, but it makes it extra special. So I hope Notre Dame gets the chance to feel that again.
You're seeing another thing special about Notre Dame. These guys are intelligent, well-spoken. We could go an hour. We're out of time. You're signing tomorrow?
In a few hours with Ned, 3 to 5, and then tomorrow as well at the bookstore.
Over at
And
Henry's
I
Bookstore.
will endorse Jerry's book. Obviously, as players, we go right to the chapter where he wrote about us first.
That's true. Then they
And I got
text
pretty
me about
interested,
it.
and the thing that I really enjoyed about it was he told the perspectives from some of our opponents, and that was kind of neat. And I kind of rib him a little bit because, there's no such thing with Jerry as off the record, and it's all in there. But it was good, very entertaining. I know a lot more about you, Ned, than I thought I did after reading his book.
More than I want to know.
I don't want to end this, but I have to because the coach's wife is next. So, ladies and gentlemen, your 1988 National Championship team representatives and Jerry Barca, a grad with a great book.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jack.